Okay, cool. Great. Well, Doug Musgrove, thank you for coming by.
My pleasure.
Um, so, one of the things that we've talked about before that I want to talk about today is I love thinking about your career in the service industry. So you've worked, was it 40
some
plus?
odd years.
40
yeah.
some odd years. So multiple decades, multiple presidencies, multiple world events, affairs. You've seen the world move from the 20th century into the 21st century from the perspective of working in bars and restaurants.
That is true.
What are some what are some things that you've seen along the way? Like or if there's anything, what's different now than when you first started in terms of the service industry?
Isn't that a great question? I think more people need to think about that. Because you get up every morning and it's now, it's just, you're just living life in the moment. You're not thinking it's 2023 or it's 1980.
Right.
It's just now. But yes, world events happen and your own family life events happen. And I remember in 1988, I had to call in sick, quote unquote, to the bar where I was working because my grandfather died down in Eugene and I had to get down to the funeral. That kind of stuff. Where, okay, wow, we're living now.
So there are things throughout your life that punctuate your time in the service industry.
For sure.
The death of a loved one. Are there any big world events or national events that come to mind that?
Well, I think that, everyone has a job. If you sell insurance and the Space Shuttle Challenger blows up, you remember that, but from the perspective of someone who serves, people, I bartended for quite a while before I went straight to waiting tables, which that happened in the late 90s, early 2000s. So before then I was purely a bartender. And the old trope about folks coming in to drown their sorrows based on either personal, problems or failures or something terrible that happens on a national scale. I just threw that Challenger disaster out there because it just popped into my mind, but that was a huge thing that happened. That was January 20-something, 1986. I'm almost positive. And that date just kind of...
It's in there.
Just sits in there because I was bartending in Northwest Portland and boy, everybody was just stunned. People didn't even know what to say or think. And
was there a TV in your bar?
We didn't have a bar in the TV, which I was grateful for. I thought that made us kind of classy, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So you so you used to be a bartender exclusively, and then you moved into serving?
Yes.
In the 90s, you said?
I guess in the late 90s, early 2000s, depending on... Oh, mid-90s. Okay, yeah. I remember now. I remember the actual job I had where they had a bartending job, and then it kind of went away, and then they said, but we can wait tables, and I said, okay, I'll do that.
Yeah. You kind of made it a point about when you go to a bartender as a guest, the interaction is a lot more, you share personal stuff more, right? You go to drown your sorrows, as they would say. But when you go to a place as a guest and you have a server, it's a way different emotional dynamic. Is that just a stereotype, or is that true?
I wonder if that's true. I think it's true to an extent, and a lot of it depends on the guest, we'll call them, right? Some people are very, very close to the chest and don't really say much to you except for Tanqueray and tonic, please. I mean, they're just not really sharers.
That's my favorite kind of guest right there.
Get straight to the point. But others, of course, want to share some or most of their life story with you, and that's what you're there for, really. And that's what I enjoy. It's getting to know people, hearing things that you just couldn't even believe in your wildest imagination that these folks are up to. Most of it, great stuff. I mean, yeah, you hear problems too, but I think people mostly want to talk about all the good stuff that's going on in their life and their plans, like what they what they wanna do, you know? Isn't that great to just say, well, I'm just taking a break here, I'm gonna have a drink, but boy, I'm gonna go conquer the world tomorrow.
As a bartender, were you the kind of bartender that would be very personal back? Would you share stuff about yourself? Or I know that a lot of my colleagues throughout the year just kind of play like almost like an echoing wall. So like let the guest talk to you and you just kind of repeat back to them what they're saying, right?
I love to share myself with other people if they're interested. Sure, no, I made friends and would go out and do things. Running, I've been a runner, my whole adult life, and even though you don't think that much of bartenders and running at the same time, actually, there's quite a few folks in the service industry who love to keep in shape, and in my particular case, going out running and stuff. And I met people, and within 2 weeks, it's like, well, you want to run, the Portland Marathon together this coming October? And they go, hell yeah, and you train, and then train with each other and stuff. You've got a friend, you got a new friend, and then you run a marathon together. That's like, it's not quite like going to war together, but I mean, you really have gone through some
You've
stuff.
been through something, yeah.
Now, and now you're good friends,
Well, I guess bartending or working in the service industry in general, you do kind of form a specific kind of camaraderie. Because I guess like any profession, unless you do something intimately, it's kind of hard to relate to someone else who's never bartended or someone who's never served tables. I throughout my life, it's happened multiple times where I'm talking to somebody about being a bartender, and it will inevitably come up and say, how hard can it be? Right? Because I think that there's some kind of a preconceived notion about what bartending is, where maybe you're just like sitting there polishing a glass and pouring like a vodka tonic for somebody, which in some environments, maybe that is the case, but if you work in anything that's high volume or anything that's fine dining, that's a very intense job, both physically, intellectually, and emotionally.
For sure. And
people don't really understand that. Plus, I think that from the guest's perspective, if you're good at your job, it might not look like it's very hard. Right? As with anyone, if you see an Olympic level sprinter, it's like you can tell that they're working, but like it looks almost effortless because they're so good at it.
Exactly. I think it's the same thing with a good bartender and some great athlete. They do make it look easy. They've practiced for years or decades to do what it is they're doing right now so that they can carry on a conversation and do their job at the same time. And, sure, carrying on a conversation with a guest, I guess, would be considered part of your job. But the most important part of your job, that would be making the drink properly, charging the right amount for it, sliding it across, picking up, in the old days, that ashtray full of cigarette butts and wiping that out, and you're constantly in motion. And we do try to make it look as easy as possible, but not everyone can do it. Certainly not everyone wants to do it. I know that. But
well, there's like the multitasking is really interesting, right? Because once you get like the physical act of the multitasking down, then there's the emotional multitasking.
Yes.
Because I've always found that once you get in like your flow, things start working well, but like the guest is so unpredictable, they can oftentimes just throw this wrench in there.
Oh yeah.
And it's something that you have to deal with, whether it's like a really weird question, it's an inappropriate thing that they said, maybe it's you have to work really hard on like a request, like they want to build their own dish because they want to do all these special things. And it can be really intense sometimes because you have this like laundry list of priorities that you have to get done, but all of a sudden you have to stop everything.
Yes.
And deal with this one thing.
Yeah. No, and you like you said, you have a mental laundry list. It's not written down. There's no place it's written down because every day is totally different. If you wanted to make yourself a list, you could put get up, put feet on floor, stand up. But you're going to be doing all those things without looking at a list. And it's the same when you're bartending. I think really, it's you're a perpetual motion machine. You're anticipating, and you are problem solving. You just, you're a little ballet dancer dancing around.
You are, right? Because you want to look graceful.
For
'cause
sure.
I'm sure, you've been in the weeds, I've been in the weeds, we've seen our friends, and it's like, it looks chaotic sometimes.
Right.
When all of a sudden you're just like slamming shit around, you break something, or
Yes.
like you slip or fall, or you do all this stuff that looks really clumsy. And whenever it happens to me, it's like I get so mad at myself. And they're really small things. Just the other night, it's right in the middle of the rush, and I'm pouring a bunch of beers, and I'm talking to a guest, and I just go to put a beer down on the beer grate, and I didn't put it down right, and the glass wobbled. It didn't break, but it like tipped over. I grabbed it, but like maybe a third of the beer spilled onto the bar. The guest was fine. It didn't get on anybody, but it's just the act of now I'm in my head. I'm pissed off because I look like an idiot. But you have to kind of give yourself a little bit of grace,
Oh, of course. I mean, watch the World Series, and then that shortstop, he's the best in the game. Oh man, he just made an error.
Yeah.
It happens.
Well,
There's nothing you can do.
Baseball is actually a really interesting parallel, only because when we look at the amount of actions that a person does, and we like break them down individually, and then look at their mistakes, a baseball player, like let's say a pitcher, for example, they
Okay.
touch the ball every single play, like
Correct.
all of the time. It's not uncommon for a pitcher to throw like 100 pitches in a game, and look at that over a whole season, and then you see how many wild pitches they have, like how many pitches did not make it to the catcher for some reason. And it's not that many.
No.
Same thing with someone who works behind a bar. If you were to like break down every action, every time you make a cocktail, every time you put an order in, every time you run a check, it's like for us, for a POS, right? For every time you hit a button, that's an opportunity to make a mistake.
Especially with our POS.
Well, yeah, certain.
We're not talking about that specific. We're not going to say the name of the POS.
Well, and it's also, I don't think it's that POS's fault in so much as it's the fault of maybe the company not updating and not doing any work to make it better. Because it's the year 2023. There are some really intuitive and robustly powerful POS systems. But every time you hit a button, there's an opportunity for you to make a mistake. Every time you pour a beer, I'll pour 100 beers in a day or two, and there's like in a month I'll spill one,
Exactly.
and I'll think I'm a fucking idiot.
Well, that's the human factor. I mean, we do mess up, but it's then you cover up, or people are watching you. It's a very performative way to make a living. Like I don't know, an accountant. Nobody sees. I mean, if they mess up, I hope they get it figured out because nobody sees them mess up.
Right.
But us, yeah, they see us, and we laugh or make a joke or say, oh well, here's a half a beer that's free for you because the other half spilled.
Is now over there.
Yes. But just have fun with it, and certainly I've been mortified, I'm sure, over several things that have happened over the years. But for the most part, when you make a mistake, the guest is like just really ready, willing, and able to not only forgive, but to, acknowledge that you're human too. And besides, you're on my team, right? You're trying to get me my food and drink. So I'm going to, I'm rooting for you all the way.
Totally. I think sometimes I always like to find ways to bisect humanity. I know that it's a spectrum, but I like to find easy ways to categorize things as like a yes or a no, like a binary system. And I always thought that it's like when you see someone trying to parallel park, half of humanity is going to root for them. You're like, you got this. I know you can do it. And the other half is going to be like, you're going to fucking fail. You
Right.
totally set that up wrong. You're going to hit the curb. And I think with bartending, there's always going to be, most people are on your side. It's not that big of a deal. It's not brain surgery. No one's going to die. But there are people that go out that, whether it's because they have a sour heart or they just had a bad day, they want to see you fail. And when you do fail, it reaffirms whatever presupposition they had about you as a bartender.
They're out there, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, some people just come in and they don't want to be happy.
Yeah.
And I've worked, from a food cart all the way up to like a premier fine dining restaurant, and they always show up. Just someone that their goal is to find a problem.
I call them the Eeyore. You read
Oh yeah, Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Eeyore character.
They just show up, and right from the get go, like they're just
Yeah.
looking. I think as you go up in price point too, I think that becomes more intense. Like they really want to find something wrong with what you're doing, maybe because they want something free, or just because, like I said, that they're just a fucking sour ass person.
I tell you, they can be really hard to deal with. I prefer it if that person is, in my section. I'd rather them be with a couple other folks in a little group. Makes it a lot easier. If they're by themselves, boy, you're in a tough spot now.
Because you get everything, right?
Well, the customer's always right anyway, right? So you can't really take a huge issue with them, and I'm not going to do that anyway. But
Right.
it's just you and them, and they're going to win this one. But yeah, if it's another group, then you can kind of get the others folks kind of laughing or joking and kind of lighten the mood a little bit, and have that person possibly even think to themselves, wow, I need to kind of lighten up here and have a good time. I'm in a restaurant with my friends,
Right.
and kind of do a reset.
When you're working with guests and you experience that, is that something that you consciously are thinking about? All right, how do I diffuse this negative energy and kind of help make this a more fun experience for everybody?
No, I'm the type of guy. Now I'm old, so bear with me here. Back when I was a kid, there was this. I guess you'd call it a toy, but it was a writing tablet with a little stylus, right? It looked like a piece of paper, except it had a thin piece of plastic over the rest of the tablet.
Oh yeah, it was like a gray tab, and then you could pick it up.
It's the eraser thing, right? So
Yeah.
you write hello there, and then just lift up the film and put it back down, and the hello there is gone.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that, right? We can start over. So that's what you gotta be when you wait tables, right? Like, just walk right up to the table, and if I see a bunch of sour faces, I'm just gonna lift the
Lift it
plastic
up.
film, put it back down, and go, how are you guys doing tonight, And hopefully they'll pick up on that.
Well, you know that saying, "Kill them with kindness."
Yeah,
It truly is the best way to work in the service industry.
I think so too.
And I don't want to be combative. When I was younger, I was very combative.
Uh-huh.
Because if someone was throwing me attitude, or if someone was so clearly wrong but trying to pin it on me, I would fight back. And it's because I was young, I was full of piss and vinegar, but at the end of the day, during those years of my life in the service industry, I was also very emotionally angsty and unstable, and I drank a lot and I did a lot of drugs
Oh my.
to self-medicate that feeling of after your shift, like you just hate everybody. And then I learned, I think that we all do eventually, that you can't let somebody dictate your life like that. So if they bring you attitude, or if they bring you shade, or if they're being
Yeah.
sour, it's just, there's no point in allowing them into your heart, or allowing them into your life. It's just be kind, be patient, and like, this is your job, just make it happen.
Make fresh squeezed lemonade, sire. I mean,
That's
if
it,
they're
every
bringing
single
lemons
time.
to you, you have to do that for sure. And I share that. My earlier years, certainly, I was a little bit more sort of all over the place, and I had, restaurant people do drink, and I used to drink probably a little bit more than I do now. That's for sure. And yeah, you have to you find your way.
Yeah.
You find your way. You got to realize, who wants to go to work feeling hungover? Nobody wants to do that. And after a few of those, you're like, okay, well, I'm going to moderate here.
Right.
Well,
Because then if you're drinking to kind of self-medicate, you're already in a bad space, and then you're hungover at work having to deal with that same stuff.
For sure.
It's I know anyone who's ever worked in this industry understands this, but it creates like a really bad mentality. And our industry is plagued with substance abuse issues because of that reason right there.
No doubt about it. Well, one of my strongest weapon has been my wife. We've been married for 90-something% of my service career, And, you know, waking up next to like the most sweet and wonderful person in the world does wonders for your life and for, you know, you just kind of getting it together.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm sure that she offers you an anchor,
yes,
you know, so that
no doubt,
throughout those hard shifts,
yeah.
you know, it's like, well, this person fucking sucks, but my wife is fucking amazing, so
Amazing.
it's fine.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, and then we had to do that thing that a lot of people have to do who work in the service industry. Most people, if you try to kind of maximize your profit, you're gonna be working nights.
Yeah.
I worked nights for almost my whole career, and my wife has worked days, so, you know, the work week, if it was Monday through Friday, which for a while there I was working Monday through Friday, and so was she, we didn't see too much of each other till the weekend, you know?
Right.
So you gotta deal with that and figure out ways to see each other and to keep it fresh and, you know, not be strangers.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting thing that not everybody who works in the service industry is with someone who also works in the service
Right.
industry, and that's got to be a really interesting relationship to navigate. I think that the person who works in the service industry, they oftentimes have far more flexibility in their schedule.
Yeah,
So it's a little bit, so from that perspective, it can be maybe easy sometimes to find that time. But if you're working Monday through Friday and your partner's doing that as well, but they work a day job, you really don't have that much. The only time you have together is just like this passing time,
yeah,
right? Where they're probably coming home and
Mhm.
you're going to work. So you don't really get to have that like during the week quality time that
Yeah.
a couple would have if they both work the same hours.
yeah. So we figured out a way to make it work, you know. And I guess maybe it's a little fresher if you're just not, you know, like time together is a little bit more precious because we don't have maybe quite as much of it as some other married couples in perhaps more conventional jobs, you know, where they
Right,
both
so
go to
that
work.
the time that you do have together is this really concentrated time
Yeah.
where like you've been waiting all week to be able just to have that quiet, soft, slow time together.
That or, hey, let's go to the coast.
Yeah, let's go do something fun.
Let's go, yeah. So I think it's worked out great.
Do you what do you think about your peers as you've gone through your career who have had maybe the same kind of relationship setup as you? Do you know people that one of them has worked in the service industry and that their partner has not? Has
Tons.
it worked out the same?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I have also known couples who both were in the service industry, and you know, everybody, you have to make your marriage work, right? So, or your relationship, or your relationship, whatever it is that you're talking about. So whether you sling hash or sell insurance, you still got to make it work.
Yeah. Do you think it's harder when you have those two schedules that are opposite?
I think it could be, you know, you don't have a set schedule so much in our industry. You know, like it's not 9 to 5. Even if you're going to work at, well, what restaurant opens at 9 o'clock in the morning, let's face it, unless they're serving breakfast, in which case they open at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, way early.
So in other words, the clock out is fluid. You're not quite sure when you're going to be done
Yeah.
because the job is different every night. And oh, you had table 12 that stayed until 1 o'clock in the morning. Well, I can't go home until they go. I can't leave. So you know, nowadays, of course, you can text your wife. Well, why would you do that at 1 o'clock in the morning? You don't, right? You don't do that. You just get home really late and you get into bed after you take a shower and they roll over and say, where have you been? You know.
Right.
But not in an accusatory way.
Right. It's just one of those things where having that fluctuating in and out time, I mean, I feel like that's got to put some kind of a strain on the partner, right? Because they don't. We are all creatures of habit, and we love having that nice habitual
Yes.
routine where like they get home around this time every day. But for a server or for a bartender, like you said,
Yeah.
it can be drastically different from night to night.
Yeah. She's gotten used to it, and so have I.
Yeah. Right on.
Oh, you know, you reminded me a while back when you were talking about if people are watching you behind the bar and you're doing this and doing that and making it look really easy, and they think to themselves, oh gosh, I could do that. I was thinking about the TV show Cheers, which was a fantastic TV comedy.
Classic.
Yeah, it's a classic. And of course, I watched that religiously because, not only because it was funny and hilarious and there were great actors and characters, but because of the restaurant scene. I liked how realistic or really are they going to make this look. And they did I give them a B+ job of this bar in Boston. It's kind of a yuppie bar in the 80s and 90s. But the thing that, of course, they couldn't help is that the main characters who had all the lines were the bartenders and the servers. So you could never really show them humping and just in the weeds, making a bunch of drinks. Not time to talk right now. Sorry, Norm. I'm busy right now. Well, that does make for good TV ratings.
Right.
So that was the one thing that they could never really do.
Well, and I feel it's so interesting because when people get, I don't want to say programmed, but they get exposed to those types of social interactions from media. I know Cheers isn't a relevant show anymore, so nobody under the age of probably 50 is going to a bar and has Cheers as an idea. But still, there are always bars and restaurants in popular media. And so specifically for a bartender, you get these guests that come up and like, you just have time to talk, don't you? And of course, when there is time to talk, then there's time to talk, but that's not always the case, yet there are people that are so oblivious.
Oh, yeah.
And they're just sitting there like, well, let me tell you about my day. You know what I mean? And there's a bar full of people, there's the printer, and in your head is just alarms going off.
Right.
And you're just like...
The clueless ones.
The clueless ones.
That's okay.
The poor clueless ones. And I think too that there's like a really it's a very useful skill as a bartender or a server of understanding the time when it's when it's time to talk to a guest or converse with the guest,
mm-hmm.
and when it's time to get the fucking order from the guest.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's a big difference.
And I think it's really interesting when you work with someone who's maybe new to that job, because they think, oh, my job is to be sociable, my job is to be nice, funny, entertaining, and that's part of it. But if you're new, like you don't understand how there's this giant machine behind you that is all based on timing.
All timing.
You know what I mean? And if you've ever worked with someone who isn't new, but that's just like their style, it's been so frustrating when you look over down the bar and your like fellow bartender, or you're on the floor and you see a server and like they're just talking to the same guest for 5 minutes, which might not seem like that's a lot of time.
That's a lot of time.
In restaurant time, that's a lot of time.
Yeah.
Like you just like stop fucking talking.
Start working.
Get their order, go put it in, and then go bust that table.
Yes.
Or like go do something else, because there's so many things going on. And
we have 220 on the books tonight. Where are we going to put all these parties if your party sits around talking to you half the night?
Right. Just fucking talking. Well, and there's like I've always liked working at in a bar where there's two people. I'm not sure if you ever have you ever worked
a 2-person bar?
Yeah.
Yes. Usually, my first was, do your question, but I worked in a TGIFridays in Tampa, Florida in the late 70s and early 80s. And that was on a Saturday night. That was a 3-person bar with a bar back. So
let's spend some time there.
4 people.
Tell me about TGIFridays in Tampa, Florida during the 70s.
It was like, if you ever read, the electric Kool-Aid acid test by Tom Wolfe.
By Tom Wolfe, yeah.
It was, and no, I'm not saying that everyone was on acid. I'm just saying that it was really wild and crazy. It was the 70s. Most of the stories you've heard are true, and if you remember it, you weren't really there.
So what you're telling me is that everybody in Tampa Bay, Florida that went to a TGIFridays on a Friday was on acid.
Well, no, I don't think everyone was. No. Most of them.
Wait, are we talking about you and the restaurant staff, or are we talking about the guests, or both?
I'm just going to leave that one be.
We're not going to leave that be. Have you ever done hallucinogens before working?
I never have, not once. But I think I know someone who did.
Oh, I definitely have.
Yeah. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
I think I smoked pot before a shift one time in my career, and it was in that period in the late 70s.
At TGIFridays in
Yes, I
Florida.
thought, oh, I'll relax a little bit,
How'd it go?
half an hour. It went horribly wrong, and I never did it again. Not recommended at
Yeah.
all.
Well, I have this rule that I developed
Okay.
during my the height of my drug use days, which is called the restaurant rule of champions.
Okay.
And it's very simple. As if you don't fuck up while you're fucked up, I really don't care what you do, because I've worked with people that are alcoholics, people that are heroin addicts, people that are
Wow.
cocaine, people that just they have to be on these substances to function in that environment, and they do their job just fine. And then there are people that I've worked with that are very bad at it, and
And they're straight as an arrow. They don't drink anything but coffee, and they're like,
Oh no!
Terrible.
I mean, folks that do drugs
Oh, okay.
and
I see.
and can't hang. I don't care what state you're in when you come to work. You just have to be able to do your shit, and if you can do that,
get it done.
it's okay. So you got high, and then worked at TGI
Oh,
Friday.
were
Were you just putting in orders wrong?
Oh, yes,
messing
I
up
was
shit?
just completely self-conscious. I was just, I got through it, but I was so uncomfortable, and I was way off my game.
Yeah.
And I think this is a long time ago, I think the manager came up and said, "What's up with you today?" Because it was a bad decision. But in my defense, let's say I'm in my late 20s, and I said, okay, I'm not doing that anymore, and I didn't. So that's how to make it right.
That's a good
Yeah.
experience, right? That
You know.
you learn from it. See, I would do it. I remember specifically, I worked at a brunch restaurant, and I looked at it as like a gym for my intellect and for my my overall cognizance, because I wanted to know how much I could hold my shit together while my internal chemistry was going woo.
Wow.
And so I would do things I would never do it right before. I would maybe take a hit of acid halfway through service.
You are crazy.
Or I would eat some mushrooms.
So that you'd be peaking, but you had just clocked out, so you'd be all right.
Right. So as I'm coming up, the rush is
Oh my goodness.
right?
Well,
But
you're way wilder than I ever was.
or I would be out all night partying
Mm-hmm.
and I wouldn't sleep. So I would be doing what they call I'm not sure if you've heard of these terms, but they're a candy flip and a hippie flip.
I
Have you
don't
ever
know
heard of
these.
So a candy flip is when you combine MDMA and LSD
Jeez.
together, which is nice because MDMA is a mild hallucinogen, but it's very tactile, right? And LSD is very visual. So by combining them correctly, everything is elevated. And then the hippie flip is the same idea, but MDMA and psilocybin.
Jeez.
So I'd be out all night partying with my friends doing these drugs, and I worked brunch, and I'd open up the restaurant.
You'd still be
And so
zooming,
I
right?
would still be zooming, and you're sitting there, and it's fucking 7 a.m.
Oh
You
my
haven't
God.
slept, and this family of four is yelling at you about their overmedium eggs.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I never had any of those. I mean, I thought I was going to be bringing wild and crazy shit to
Well,
you. But it was all, it's all alcohol, marijuana, and probably some cocaine thrown in there too.
if you're in Tampa Bay in the 70s, Douglas,
Yeah.
you're doing.
No, I never
you're doing
really
well.
dabbled much in that, but I had close bartending friends who, just started off, it's kind of, and then they liked it, I mean, it was.
Well,
It came to be a problem. A couple of guys got fired, and I never really went there. So, and again, the pot too was one time before work.
yeah.
After work, relax,
Yeah.
then you're fine, But it's alcohol. All right, let's face it.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
that's
when
what
you're
we sell
when
at
you're a
the restaurant.
bartender, you're literally an arm's length away from anything that you want
Correct.
the entire shift, and you get stressed out. You just pour a little nip. You get the nip, or
Someone's done that.
We
some point.
we always had the tactic of especially in a brunch setting, as long as it's in a coffee cup, like no one is going to ask you any questions.
Right.
You know, so we would always do Eddie Money Mimosas.
Eddie Money Mimosas.
So like we would play a lot of classic rock,
Yeah,
and whenever an Eddie Money song would come on,
you could have.
we would just get our little coffee mugs
Uh-huh.
and just throw some orange juice or some vodka in there, some orange juice or
There you
some
go.
sparkling, and you're just kind of sipping on it, you know. And to everybody else out there, it's Saturday morning.
Eddie Money, that's 2 tickets to paradise.
Oh
right?
yeah. Shaken.
Okay.
2 Tickets to Paradise. I think the big hit is Take Me Home Tonight. Take
Oh,
me
yes,
home
of course.
tonight.
Well, oh my God. I mean, you know, there's nothing better, right? Bartending, the music's blaring, everybody's having a great time. You know, the bartender's probably mostly sober. And just that feeling in a bar
It's fun.
on a crazy Friday night, or let's say an unexpected Tuesday night where things just all of a sudden explode for some reason that no one could ever really put their finger on, or
Right.
or the World Series is on in the corner, you know, not to bring baseball back, but that's the holy grail sport. So
For you?
I think for anyone who thinks correctly.
No, I think that I love baseball. I think football is probably
More
Now-
popular than baseball, and
Yeah.
basketball is more popular than both of them, and that's
Yeah.
great. I'm a sports junkie, you know.
Yeah,
I was hired out of
Right, to
bartending
be a
gig
sports
to be a
writer.
sports writer.
Right.
Right there at the bar by this yuppie kid who said, "We need a sports writer real bad." And I said, "Oh, I just got my degree in journalism." He goes, "Can you come down and interview?" And I interviewed the next couple days later, and I was working within the week, and that all happened. That was the guy who I'm still friends with, Tony, who lives in Maine now. He's retired. He had a long career with the Washington Post. This was a real journalist. Okay, this guy was the real deal. But he came in, and it was like a Sunday brunch, I think it was. And I was having a real good time. It was probably, noon. And I grabbed the beer tap handle. It was probably Budweiser. These are the dark ages, all right, dude. There's no good microbrews back then.
Budweiser, Coors, Miller.
That was pretty
And
much
then
it.
like maybe your regional beer.
Was there even a regional
Yeah,
beer?
yeah. I mean, if when I'm in
If there
Indiana,
was,
it's
I
like
forgot.
old style.
Right, well, ours would have
You're-
been something, it would have been Pabst. Pabst Blue Ribbon,
Yeah.
something like that. But, I mean, Florida,
Yeah. What do they have?
they didn't have anything back then except Bud and Busch.
Oh,
Bud
Busch,
Light,
of course.
Busch. But anyway, I took the tap handle and I unscrewed it, and I was singing, and my friend Tony could tell you right now what the song was, but I can't remember what it was, like a Rolling Stone song. I was like, "We're rocking out," he said, "Oh, man, I want to get to know this guy," and then he offered me the job.
Why? What was it? Was it just like a song playing on the radio?
Yeah, it was just the sound system
You
of
just
the,
felt
of the
it.
restaurant. I was just showing off a little bit,
Yeah, you were.
feeling good.
TGI Friday.
It was, TGI Fridays. What can you say?
Are they still
I
around?
think it's still around. I think it's a real sad outfit now. And back then it was probably a sad outfit too, but we didn't know it.
No, I feel like during that because that's kind of the genesis of those American chain
I'm
restaurants.
telling you,
Where it was like-
on the cutting edge.
It was a big deal
Yeah.
to have this thing show up because before that, it's just like mom and pop sit down restaurants, and then I think maybe during the middle of the 20th century is when fast food kind of starts to happen.
Yeah.
And so like the TGI Friday idea is like this hip, young, cool thing.
Absolutely. They really tapped into what was happening culturally, the music, and it was just like youth was just coming up, and you were no longer, just being quiet and, just going to class and being good and being in bed by 9:30 anymore.
Right.
And we wore the striped shirts, and you had to wear a hat. You could wear any hat you wanted. That was just the perfect,
Any kind of hat?
any kind
like
of
a
hat?
cowboy hat,
Anything.
baseball hat.
as long as you had a hat
What
on.
kind of hat did you wear?
I wore a number of different hats. I wore a cowboy hat. Oh, I used to wear this. It's kind of like an aviator's. It was a fake aviator's hat, the kind that had the leather ear flaps down here, like
Yeah,
the
like a
old-fashioned
helmet kind of
guys,
thing?
like a helmet. Except
You would bartend in that at TGI Friday?
yes, of course. Anything to, have people look at you, you know. I want to be the center of attention.
And you weren't doing lines in the back?
I was not.
Douglas.
Some friends that I knew were, but I was not. I don't know. I just didn't want to.
You just have fun with it. Well, and there are some people that are, I've always enjoyed substances of multiple kinds, but I oftentimes find myself, it's like, some people have to do this to like get up somewhere. I feel like I use them for a much different reason. I feel like there are some people that are just kind of, you're just kind of weird as it is. You know what I mean?
I have that feeling a lot.
But like over time, you find ways to like mask it, you know,
Sure.
or to.
I think most restaurant people have been there, you know, where they kind of just gone over the edge a little bit, slowly but surely, until they realize that they're drinking a lot, you know.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to figure that out. You're gonna have to deal with that and
like we were saying, especially as a bartender, like you're just literally surrounded by alcohol, and then I don't know if this is just a. I would assume this is a timeless thing, but you're just always like a call away from drugs, just because bars are where that whole entire economy happens, anyways.
Yeah.
And so you're just always it's so easy for you to access it, as opposed to maybe your accountant friend.
Yeah.
You know, probably isn't going to be able to get drugs as easy as the bartender friend.
I wouldn't think so. Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, I mean, I guess the places I worked in weren't all that sleazy after all when you really think about, now that I hear about your experience.
Well, it's not sleazy, Douglas. I wasn't sleazy. No, I was.
I used the wrong word.
dirtball.
I used the wrong word.
I was a dirtbag, dude. And it's well,
That's funny.
It is funny because I always felt that, you know, I would be like taking the bus and I would go by like a really nice establishment and I'd see the servers in there and they're
You go,
wearing,
ooh, I
like,
want to
ooh,
be
like
that.
they look like they got it. But then you fucking get there and they're all doing the same thing anyways.
That's right.
They're just wearing nicer clothes and their speech is more articulate because they've had longer to fucking practice.
Right?
Like everyone is doing it. That's not true. Not everyone is doing it, but certainly as I've gotten older, and I've started to take other aspects of my life far more seriously. That like party atmosphere while working, it is fun when you're younger, but it's not sustainable. Like,
No.
Because the come downs for me were days where I would just like I couldn't do anything.
Right.
I was just completely empty and wasted out, and I just had to like recover for days. But it's interesting too because I think that this can happen in any industry, but again, specifically with the restaurant, there's like this trifecta that I got trapped in, which is nicotine, caffeine, and alcohol, right? So we can just start this cycle at any point, but I wake up, I'm hungover from the night before. So like I make my coffee, I have my cigarette. They're both stimulants. So I get my little perk of energy, feel good. I go into work, but I'm still kind of hungover. So I'm having coffee all day long.
Yeah.
I'm going out for like every half hour
Cigarette.
So then by the end of my 6 to 8 hour shift, I'm essentially strung out again because I was hungover all day and I've just been dosing my body with amphetamines and stimulants. So what's the first thing that you do is you reach for a
Alcohol.
depressant. You know, you chug that first beer and then you have that first shot and then you're equalized. But that feels really good. So
I'm
then
learning a lot about you today, Justin.
So then you keep on going.
You know that quote from Homer Simpson from The Simpsons?
Which
It's,
one?
I know, so many, right? My favorite, I think, of his is, alcohol, the cause of and the solution to all of life's problems.
There it is. There it is. So you drink all night long, and then you wake up the next day, you're hungover, you have your cigarette.
I've been there.
And your coffee. And
Not cigarettes, though.
yeah.
No
Good
cigarettes.
for you. Good for you.
Because I'm running 10 miles
Right.
in the morning, so.
Well, but that's the funny thing is, I think you know this about me, but I was a highly competitive D1 college runner.
Well, we haven't talked about this yet.
No?
What was your distance?
Yeah, we have. I think it was one of the first things I would talk about because then we talked about once a runner.
Oh, you know that I'm old. I forgot that.
That's all right. Yeah, no,
That was months ago.
so I ran for Ball State University for 1 year.
Is that in Valparaiso?
No, it's in Muncie, Indiana.
Muncie.
But then because of Title IX, the athletic department cut the funding for the men's track and field program and cross program, so then I transferred to Purdue University, where
Nice.
I ran and finished out my collegiate career there.
And what was your event?
I was 5K, 10K. I would run an occasional. I think I ran one indoor mile or like 3K, and then I would run.
That's
would do
fantastic.
cross. Yeah, but so cigarettes for me, like my last year of college, I suffered a stress fracture in my right foot, and it's also at the same time where I kind of dawned on me like I wasn't good enough.
Yeah,
I wanted to be an Olympic runner.
I was there too.
That was my goal, and it's like that like gut check that says, you know what, you've worked, and I worked really fucking hard.
Oh yeah.
It's the only thing to this day in my life that I literally did as hard as I could. Like I pulled out all the stops. I trained twice a day, every fucking day for years. I couldn't have done it any harder, and I was still just like an average runner, or like an average D1 college runner. You know, so
You went D1, dog. You were a D1 runner. I mean, most people
Yeah, but
couldn't
I was-
in their dreams
but I was
do
on
what
like
you did.
but as you know, anytime you go into a pursuit, like
Mhm.
then you like there's like the general public, and then there's like the top of that niche, and once you get to the bottom of that top, you're like, holy fuck,
The bottom of the top
it's
is
so
really
it's so far
rough
away.
stuff.
It's so far away.
Yeah.
Like there's because so we used to do this thing called 400 Fridays, where in the summer during our base period we would at the end of our long run go to the track, put on our spikes, and run like a 400 as hard as we could. Like the fastest I could run a 400 I think was like 56 seconds, and like that's what at the Olympic level you'll do at the end of your 10K.
Right.
To be even in contention to win. And it just, as like the reality began to dawn on me, I just thought to myself, I can't be a fucking runner.
The math is very cruel
It's
when
just
it
so
gets
hard.
to
There-
that.
Anyways, what I'm saying is that's when I started to do all my drugs. Because I was so
Right?
ideologically heartbroken,
Mm-hmm.
and I started to get into, I created a band, I started to write. It's when I started to smoke cigarettes and drink, because I hadn't done
You couldn't do any of that.
any of that stuff.
You're
during
delayed
those years.
gratification.
And so cigarettes were fucking awesome. I still remember the first
You don't
first
smoke
time,
anymore, do you?
but the first time I ever had a cigarette, I bought a pack of Camel Lights. So it was for a costume. So at Purdue, they did this thing called Breakfast Club, and if you want to talk about alcohol and this weird place it has in our world, so every time there's a home football game, the Purdue campus, all the bars would open up super early, or like I don't know, 7, 8 a.m. and they would put trash bags in their windows so that it'd be dark inside, and everyone would get dressed up as like it was Halloween,
Oh my gosh.
and they would go wait in line outside of these bars for them to open up, and everybody would just get fucked up before like noon, and then go to the football game.
And
Mind
since
you,
it's Purdue, you're going to lose, so that's really sucky.
I don't really care. I never liked sports. Oh no, I
Except
did.
running.
Except running. But it'd be so fucked up because there'd be like the West Lafayette cops would just be
They just parked.
they would just be there,
Uh-huh.
and all these underage fucking kids are stumbling drunk across the street,
Right?
but they're just watching it.
They didn't do
Right?
anything.
No, because you can't. But anyway, so I went was one time as Bob Dylan.
Nice.
And I had on like it was like later '60s era, like a Rolling Stone Bob Dylan,
Uh-huh.
with the tight black jeans and the fashion boots,
Sunglasses.
and the sunglasses. I had my little harmonica thing, and I went and bought a pack of cigarettes. And I would just like have them, like, hey, what's that?
Oh,
Hey.
that's good.
But I didn't smoke. So and then I was hanging out with this lady that I wanted to impress, and she's like, hey, I'm kind of done. Like, let's go back to my place. And I went with a bunch of people, and we ended up on her roof, and she was playing like an Elliott Smith vinyl. And I just remember I smoked one, and it was so good.
I think that I stayed away from them
It was
on
so much
purpose
fun.
because I saw how good it was. And
I
I'm
was
like,
drunk,
no.
and I got that fucking nicotine buzz, and I smoked half of a fucking pack.
Oh
in
my
like
God.
an hour because it was so good, and like the ethanol from the alcohol is a depressant.
I hear that those two together are unbelievable. I can't believe I
they're
never
great.
tried
Well,
it.
they're like a low grade speedball,
Right.
you know, something that you can do consistently.
Well, I did try nicotine one time, and it was at TGI Fridays.
There we go. We're back to TGI Fridays. Hey, what's their slogan? Do they have like
every
a
day is
punchline?
Friday, I think. I think I'm making that up, but it should have been every day is Friday, or wear any hat you want, you know. But like a friend of mine that I waited tables with said, "Hey, I got some snuff. I got some Copenhagen in a little round tin." And it was Sunday brunch. I'll never forget. Right, working Sunday, very busy, just full, running around. I was waiting tables that day instead of bartending. You know, you have to be versatile in the restaurant business or you're never going to make it. And he said, I'm going to take a pinch. Here, take a pinch. And I said, sure, because I was that 20-year-old kid who was like, yeah, I'll try anything, at least twice. Well, I only tried this once. Took the pinch, put it in my mouth, waiting tables. For the first 10 minutes, it was like the most ecstatic experience. I was like, I could do no wrong. I was everywhere. I was just like, I was controlling my section. I was doing it all. And then in about 15 minutes, I was like, what's going on? And things were spinning. And I got so sick.
Ooh.
You know, the nicotine on this virgin body was just way too much, man. And especially probably my blood's pumping, right? I mean, my body's, I'm moving.
Right, because you're working.
And the nicotine's just surging through my body. I got sick. Oh, it was,
did you throw up?
I did. I had to excuse myself. And it came back 3 minutes later, and I was like, huh, I feel okay. And I just finished it out, of course. But I never did that again. It just wasn't, you know, wasn't for me.
So your first exposure to nicotine was with chew.
With chew.
Yeah.
Never did actually smoke a cigarette.
Yeah, it's probably it's for the better. Cigarettes, you know, we all, if we ingest any type of substance like that, there's always like a physical trade-off, right?
For sure.
Ethanol isn't good for you. Your body reacts to it like poison, but you do get these interesting positive effects. Same thing
you
with
build up a tolerance.
You build up a tolerance. It's the same thing with nicotine. Like it feels good.
Yeah.
But man, with like modern cigarettes and that chewing shit, it's so bad for you.
Yeah.
And that's what ended up. You know, it took me a few times to quit, and I still, you know, I was talking to a friend about addiction because she is hasn't drank alcohol for a few years, but she just booked a trip to go to Germany and Barcelona.
Nice.
And she loves beer. And she was talking to me. She said, "I don't know. When I go to Germany, I would have to have a beer, or like I'm going to Spain. I would have to have Spanish wine." And we were talking, and there's this thing that I use with myself when it comes to habitual behavior, like cigarettes, for example. I remember when I quit for the final time, I truly said to myself, I don't think I'm not going to say I will never smoke a cigarette ever again. Because that's not how human beings work. Like, we're fluid people.
Yeah.
We're fluid creatures. And by having this rigid structure, it's like the other side of the coin of addiction.
Yes.
Saying that you cannot do this thing ever. So I've had cigarettes since I quit, but like every time that I had one, it was worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
And I didn't get the same high that I got from it or that I was expecting. It didn't taste the same way. It didn't feel good. And again, I can't say that I will never ever smoke again, but I have no
diminishing returns.
It is. Although I do enjoy cigars.
Ah.
I will absolutely smoke a cigar and drink some bourbon or some scotch. And it's like a wonderful.
That's a match made in heaven.
They're very good. Because again, like the nicotine is a really nice little stimulant.
Yeah.
And the ethanol is this really cool depressant, so you get this really nice little fun give and take.
Keep it in control, and nobody gets hurt, right?
Right. So that's funny. I feel like there's a lot of stories that people have about working in the industry with substances. I don't. Again, I'm not sure many other jobs where it's so normalized for people to be intoxicated.
I
and
can't think of one.
working. You know, I feel like it would be a shock to most citizens saying that there is a 75% chance that your server or your bartender, depending on of course where where you go,
Has at least a .04 blood alcohol
at,
content.
at any
Let's face
given
it.
time.
Not .4, .04.
0.04. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, you know, it is a part of the industry.
It
And
is.
It's part of the lifestyle. It's part of the image. Let's face it, I'm sure it's the reason some of the people get into the business to begin with. But it also leads to, you know, I know a bunch of bartenders and waiters who now, you know, work for wine distributorships and sell fancy wine, and have a great lifestyle and still get to, you know, drink as part of their job.
it's true.
You know, so it's
Well, it's also, as a person who's selling this stuff, whether it be at the level of a vendor or like a rep, or all the way down to, not down, but all the way over to a server or a bartender, like you have to know what you're,
you have to have
talking
your,
about.
your product knowledge.
and it's really easy to drink, and it's fun, it tastes good, and there's such a vast world to understand about alcohol.
Yeah.
Wine is a lifetime. You
Wine's
know,
all by itself.
spirits is a whole other,
Take you forever, yeah.
everything. So it's like and that is one of the fun things about working in this industry, is that you can't ever master it.
Right.
And there's something to be said about that being like a kind of a lifelong pursuit of learning, understanding, education, and it's something that never really gets boring as long as you want to continue to pursue it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love coming to a table and having somebody ask me, "Oh, what wine should I get?" You know, and it's so great because they, you know, a lot of times they'll say, "Well, I don't know anything, and I just want to impress these people. Can you help me find a bottle of wine?" And you know, ask a couple of questions and find out, without asking them specifically, how much do you want to spend. Find out how much they want to spend, and get them into a nice bottle of wine. You know, it's a lot of fun.
When you're, whether it's wine or food or alcohol or anything, you know, it behooves you to sell things that cost more money, obviously.
It does.
But how do you, what are some strategies that you use to kind of, to figure out where someone is at financially? Because you can't go up to someone and say, "Hey, how much money do you want to spend tonight?"
You can't
right,
do
'cause
that.
there's no tact there.
That's not going to work.
So what do you do?
We had a bourbon on last year that was highly allocated, and I wish I could remember which one it was, but it was $400 a shot, and it wasn't Pappy Van Winkle, but it was
Oh, it was the Double Eagle Very Rare.
Double Eagle Very Rare.
Yeah.
How old was that one?
I think it was a blend of 20-year-old.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it was $400 a shot.
Yeah.
And in the pre-shift meeting, we always have a pre-shift, right, where you get together with the managers and all the servers, and they tell you, "We've only got 3 orders of halibut tonight. Focus of our service tonight is we provide outstanding guest experience, and we come from a place of abundance. So if they want something extra within reason, we're not going to charge them for it, right? We're just going to give it to them because they spend a lot of money at our restaurant. So, and we have a feature tonight of the bourbon, the Double Eagle Very Rare, and it's $400 a shot, and see what you can do." Well, 10 minutes later, I got my first table, and they sat right down, and I said, as I always try to, "Are we celebrating something tonight?" And the woman said, "Oh, this young man just got a really great job, a great promotion or something. You know, they're celebrating his career has just taken a big upswing." And I said, "Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. Are you going to celebrate with, you know, a special drink?" And he said, "Yeah, I'd love to." And I said, "Are you into bourbon at all?" And he said, "I love a good bourbon." And the woman cuts in and says, "Get it for him, whatever it is." And I said, "Well, I have this special, you know, Double Eagle Very Rare." I said, it's not an inexpensive whiskey." And she goes, "I don't care, please bring it to him." So, and I did. And that was on the check. She didn't say a word. She paid the check.
Yeah.
I mean, that $400 was almost half of everything they spent at the table.
Well, and I think too, when it comes to price, the expectation of the guest is managed partially by where they're at. so you walk into a really high-end place and you have that conversation, they've already come to terms with how much money that could possibly be. Whereas if you went to a TGI Fridays and said that,
Right.
and then got the $400
That's
shot,
that might not go over.
there might be a different
I also recall that
conversation.
this woman was a member of our rewards program, which means she's already been in before. She knows the drill, right?
Right,
She knows
she understands
what our restaurant is,
Yeah,
and she knows that it's not going to be cheap.
yeah.
And but that opportunity was just like, oh, I got this sale so hard. This is just so fun. This is so easy, you know. For the time I waited on the Toronto Raptors, this was in the winter, like around New Year's of 2019 or 2018. It was the year they won the championship. That June they won the NBA championship. So this is them in Portland playing a regular season game halfway through the season where they win the freaking world title. And they were in a private room, the vintage room, and I got them. And I ended up getting each of the players on the team to buy a Louis XIII cognac, and those are $350 each, right?
$375.
$375. I think they were
before the
$350 back in
service
2019. Anyways, so there were
So
like
how many people?
13 of them. So
That's gotta be the most you ever sold.
they spent a lot of money, and that's the most money I ever made in a night. You know, it was just
How much was that?
is this gauche? I think I made
No.
$1,500 that night.
You had to make more than that, because they had dinner too.
They had dinner too.
So
I think it was actually one of those nights
because
where
well,
I didn't have that great of a night,
well,
right?
let's, hold on, but
And that was my last
let's
table.
let's look at it though. Like if they get 15, let's just say 15, right?
This is more like 10.
Okay, so there's 10 of them, so they're spending $3,500
That's just on
just on
the nightcap.
Yeah.
No, I think their bill was, $6,000 or something like that. I mean,
Okay.
I did well. I had no complaints.
Yeah, but see, and I don't think it is gauche, because I think people in general should talk more about their money. I think that it should
That's
be
fine with me.
it should be a more open conversation. This kind of goes off the topic of what we're talking about, but
What topic it is we're on right now anyway, Justin?
we're talking about the Toronto Raptors drinking 100-year-old cognac.
Okay, I remember now.
And that's why they won the championship that year.
You know what?
Because
I
you
am
gave
going to
them
take credit for that.
You gave them great care that evening, and you gave them a wonderful
The
little
first Canadian team to ever win the NBA
treat,
championship.
because they drank 100-year-old cognac
That's
served by
right.
Doug Musgrove.
That's right.
You're welcome, Toronto.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's
But no, the money, is a thing, another thing that a lot of people who work for a living might not understand or be able to get used to, which is, if you are an accountant or you sell life insurance, you make X. Now maybe there's a bonus here, and maybe after 5 years you're gonna get a raise here, but you're gonna be able to predict almost exactly how much money you're gonna be, when you do your taxes, we don't have that. Ours is different every year.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole other podcast talking about the way that people in the service industry, front of the house mainly, because back of the house has a far more static pay structure, although
Yes.
they do get tips too. But the front of the house really, it fluctuates greatly, and if you don't work, you don't get paid.
No.
And that's something that in more office type jobs, you have a salary,
Mm-hmm.
and so like, if you don't work that day, like, you're still making the same amount of money.
Yeah.
And with people who work in the restaurant industry, you have to work. I think that the pandemic really kind of showed people from the outside what it's like as the service person, because I hate to break it to everybody who is out there, but there are probably sick people at your restaurant when you go out to eat.
Probably.
Someone who probably didn't feel that good that day, but can't afford to fucking call in, or wasn't feeling good that day, and they were told you have to come in anyways.
Right.
Right.
Even though they also tell you out of the other side of their mouth, don't come in.
Don't
if
come
you're
in when
not
you're
feeling
sick.
Well.
But this has happened to me multiple times where I call in someplace and I say, hey, I'm not feeling very good today. Well, how bad are you feeling? Whereas at any other job,
Right.
it's like I don't feel good. I'm not
Don't come.
coming in today,
Don't come.
and that's it. So that's yeah. Not
Oh, but the income, my lord, I mean, I was looking at my social security statement for, I was looking at my entire work history online the other day, which started in 1972. In 1972, which was the year I graduated from high school, I think I made $283, and that was great money for
That's-
an 18-year-old.
that was good a year.
Anyway, but COVID, oh shit! Oh, you're like, here, 2019. All right, I'm making good money there. 2020, 2021,
Go see if it was on.
2022 is coming back. 2023 has been great.
Yeah.
But boy, of course, and it's not just restaurant people who felt that.
Right. Anyone who worked in a job where there was that like the daily cash flow thing happens, where like you have to be working to be able to make money. And as a whole, we've kind of touched on a number of things in this conversation about how erratic life in the service industry is. Much like you were saying about if you have that more office, corporate, professional type of job, you have a salary. Now you know how much you're going to make.
Yep.
If you work in the service industry, it fluctuates. We've also talked about scheduling. Like if
Scheduling.
you know that I have to be at work at 9 a.m. and then I leave work at 5 p.m.
Yep.
Monday through Friday, every single day, no matter what. If you work in the restaurant industry, oftentimes if you're at a place long enough, then you can build your schedule. But even then, your in time fluctuates. Maybe today we need you in at 3 p.m. Maybe tomorrow it's at 7 p.m. And your out time fluctuates. You know what I mean? Maybe you're in at 3 p.m. and you're out at 11 one day. Maybe you're in at 7 and out at 10. There's just no. It's a very erratic lifestyle, and I think that because of that, there's erratic behavior that gets attached to that. Much of like we've been talking about with the substance abuse.
Yes.
Right. So you have all of these things that it's very hard, I think, to exist in the restaurant industry as a career and navigate these things because there's no one to fucking teach you.
Yeah. You gotta be the kind of person that rolls with the punches a little bit, and I enjoy that aspect of it. I think it's fun to not be quite sure when you're coming in or when you're going to be going out, or they need you for a private party tonight, but the party doesn't start till 9 o'clock.
Right.
So we need you in at 8:30, and it's like, great, I can take a nap, have dinner with my family, take a shower and shave, and go on into work. So you got to be ready for that kind of
See,
stuff.
I kind of hate that though.
Usually, I'd rather go in early, but
well, I mean
sometimes they want you in late.
the erraticness of it,
Mhm.
because outside of this is one of the other things about restaurant work that has worked very well for me is because of the nature of it. I've done so many other things in my life. Like I've helped build a theater company, a cannabis company. I have all my own productions and all my own projects that I do, and it's because of that fluctuating schedule where I can kind of
You can fit that in and still have
You
a
can-
restaurant job.
make it happen, right? And also, like the restaurant job is done when I leave.
Yeah. There's
You know,
never any paperwork.
unless you have a job in management. Like I'm not taking any of my restaurant work home. It's just done. And then boom, on to my next thing. So. But because of that, because of the life that I've established outside of the restaurant industry, which is where my true passion lies, right?
Yes.
I crave that stability of here are the days that I work, here are the days I don't work. I go into work at this time on this day every single time that I work that day, because otherwise, you have to kind of wait till that day to know when you're going in, and how can you possibly schedule shit?
Other people are depending on you, and if you don't know when you're available, then.
Right. So I think that for a lot of people who do work in the industry, they like that fluctuation or that inconsistency because it does allow them to kind of do these things. But I need to have that. Like I crave to have that
Yeah.
structure. That's why I think for me as an individual, as I've gotten older, it has been very challenging for me because of that inconsistency.
Yeah.
And I almost I've worked very hard in every job that I've been in to
climb up to the top of the
To-
schedule.
Yeah, to where like this is my schedule every week,
Yeah.
no matter what. Don't schedule me on any other day. I can cover if I have enough.
Yeah, a little notice, lead
Yeah,
time.
if you let me know, but like don't call me the fucking day of and say, hey, we need you to come in unless it's an emergency.
Yeah,
And I will do my best, but I have these other things that also have priority in my
Yeah.
life.
yeah.
So yeah, I think that restaurant work is man, it's a fucking wild ride. I think that it, kind of like we were talking about earlier, with having to deal with so much stuff emotionally, you learn a lot.
You
And-
really do. I mean, human nature, and if you are a lover of, the concept or the science of psychology, you're going to be a much better off server. You've got to understand how people tick. And since we are people too, we have to understand how we ourselves are ticking at the same time, and how those two people are interacting. You're driving the boat. They think they're driving it, but you're driving it in your section, right? You've got 3 tables, and you've got 15 people, and you got to make it all work.
Yeah.
And without some good working knowledge of psychology, you're in for a rough ride.
Well, it's fun though because you learn that.
Oh, it's great.
And when you first start out, you think and I think this is any young person, but when you first start out in the industry, you think you know so fucking much.
Oh yeah.
And you start to do these things. You start to say these things to people, or you take this this certain approach, and it doesn't work, and it blows up, and then you get no tip, and you think to yourself, well, that's not what I thought was going to happen at all.
Yeah.
And as you go through your life and through your career, you learn this. I think that the people that understand how to talk to people,
Hmm.
it's such a good skill set to have.
It is.
And it's, working in a restaurant setting is essentially a sales job. And sales is, it's at the heart of how our economy works. It's at the heart of how we interact with people. And so being able to have that, you have so much practice because you talk to so many fucking people and it's like most individuals don't talk to that many people in a lifetime that we might talk to in 1 year,
Yeah.
right? Strangers,
For sure.
complete strangers that we have to instantaneously build like an emotional rapport with.
If only for 2 hours.
But even it's not for 2 hours really, because how much time are you actually talking to
Oh,
them?
for sure, right? Maybe 4
5
minutes.
minutes?
Yeah. Yeah.
So within that 5-minute time period,
It's
at
everything's
every
very
table.
concentrated.
yeah. So you have let's just say you have a 5-table section, right? So for every turn, there's 25 minutes of time that you give to each of these fucking groups, and during that time, you have to build a whole world with each table, flawlessly, quickly, clearly, and positively.
It's perfect
And then-
for a theater person like you, Justin.
It's perfect for, well, see, but that's why I moved to bartending, because I fucking hate serving.
Yeah?
I don't like being at the table and having to like do all this fucking shit. I just don't like it.
You just want to read a ticket and make drinks.
I want to make drinks.
Yeah.
And I don't mind waiting on people at the bar,
Right.
but bartending is just a little bit different.
Mhm.
There's a right.
You're
Wouldn't
a
you say
purist.
what do you think because there is a difference between how bartenders and guests interact and how servers and guests interact.
Oh, for sure.
What do you think
It's
that?
a different culture. It's a subset, right? I mean, everyone in the restaurant is in the restaurant, but only 1/4 of the people in the restaurant are in the bar. And they are there for a reason. Now, maybe there was just only room for them in the bar, but I think that most of them are choosing to be in the bar.
Yeah,
There's-
there's a different expectation when a guest sits down at the bar than when they sit down at a booth.
When I go out, I'd like to sit in the bar.
Yeah.
If I had my choice, if it has tables, if it just has a bar, then I'll sit at the bar, that's fine. But I like the energy of the bar. I like it's kind of like a secret club, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, what's the password here? Well, the password is, have a, Macallan 15 on the rocks, please. That's the password.
Well, Doug, I think we should probably wrap up here.
I hope we can do more of this. It's really fun.
Yeah, this is super fun. What since we're kind of been talking about bars today, what's your go-to drink? Like, when you go out to drink, are you?
For myself,
yeah,
not,
for
not
you.
to serve to
No,
another
for yourself.
person.
Do you do cocktails, like beer, wine, shots?
I'm all over the joint, you know,
Yeah.
depending on my mood and depending on whether I'm in my hometown here, Portland, Oregon, or whether I'm out traveling. Because
True.
I want to drink what the locals are making and drinking and talking about, you know. And I was just in Finland, for God's sake, in August, and that was just so spectacular. And they have all kinds of cool spirits there in Akavi, and they make spirits out of, you know, pine trees and out of bogs.
Oh
you know.
yeah,
They-
all that
I mean,
alpine spirits. And
yeah.
stuff. Like,
But a
Different
local
stuff.
beer, there's nothing better than a local beer. Wherever you are in the world, now is such a glorious time for beer. You know, when I was in my 20s and drinking quantities of beer, I didn't have really much of a choice in terms of what kind of beer you wanted. I mean, the difference was, do you want Bud, do you want Heineken, or do you want Miller Lite? I mean, it was all lager, it was all, you know, I mean, not very good. And now there's just so much great beer out there. So I definitely like, if I could just have have a local beer in Butte, Montana, or in Helsinki, Finland, and just you get the flavor of where you are.
yeah, it's fun to taste something that was made there with the ingredients
Without a doubt.
that are from there.
And you go to France, you want to drink local wine. You don't want to drink. I mean, if you go to Burgundy, you're going to be drinking Bordeaux. You're going to be drinking Burgundy. You know, so it's such a
So for
great
you,
way to
it's-
travel.
It just kind of depends on where you're at, what you do. Well, do you have a favorite cocktail?
I mean, I think if, you know, I'm on a desert island and all I have to do is hold out my hand and they're gonna keep putting one drink, but only one drink in my hand, it's gonna be a fresh squeezed, shaken, top shelf margarita with good lime juice and Cointreau and salt on the rim.
Oof.
You can't
I'm
really,
getting thirsty.
you can't beat that.
What kind of tequila do you prefer in your margarita?
Oh.
In terms of age, do you want a Blanco, Reposado?
I like a Blanco. I like a real clean
Something sharp,
margarita.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always found it interesting when people put aged tequila in
And that can work,
It's
you know.
okay, but that nice sharp grassiness from the Blanco goes
Yeah.
so well with the orange and the lime.
If I want a reposado, I'll just have, you know, that just by itself and sip on it and just get all those amazing flavors and the smokiness and the, you know, you're just transported to Mexico, you know, it's fantastic. Oh, and my favorite joke or one-liner about what we do for a living is two ladies are sitting there talking to each other, bragging about how great their children are, and the one woman goes, you know, my son's an actor in New York. And the other one says, oh yeah? What restaurant? Cheers.
Cheers. That's good. That's good, man.
I like that one.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time.
If you see Doug Musgrove out, buy him a margarita with a top shelf Blanco tequila.